But how have you been, man?
Been good, man. Just back on the grind.
Yeah. Have you been busy, or have you had a little bit of a catch-up period at all, or what's the last few weeks or months been like for you?
The last week, I just been able to spend time with the family and hang out at home, which has been nice. But then I
Yeah.
head out with uh, the brothers once again out in Singapore for a job out there, and I'm leaving Monday. So it's kind of just enjoying this downtime, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, that's an important part of it. So, yeah, they mentioned that on the podcast. How long are you guys going to Singapore for?
a week. I'll be there a week. They're already there doing some pre-pro stuff, but yeah.
That's exciting. Are you allowed to say anything about what you're doing, or is it all super top secret?
Um, I don't know. So I mean, I could probably make it vague, you know. I think it's just it's almost like a PSA out there,
Okay.
but it's a commercial. They just help the people, the society or whatever community, I would say, out there.
Gotcha.
I
And is that going to
can't
get
really specify.
released domestically, or is it for like international use?
I'm pretty sure it's just meant for Singapore because it's targeted specifically to the education there, and yeah. So I don't think it'd be anything bigger than that. So. But
Gotcha.
if it turns out cool, we have a director's cut, you know?
Yeah. Sneak onto Vimeo some way.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I feel like probably the most manageable format for this is I'll hit you with some questions, and then if anyone else has questions, you can either just try and jump in, or if you like put something in the chat that you have a question, I'll just sort of call on you, and it stops all of us talking at the same time. But I guess to just sort of start with that, just talk to the brothers about the process for Sleep on My Baby, and had some questions from other people about like the process for the visuals on it and just some of what went into that. So I mean, I guess I would start with like what was your experience with like the beginning of that project and them reaching out to you, and like what did they have and what did you ask for? Like what was sort of pre-pro and like that initial conversation like, and at what point were you like, oh yeah, this is something I want to be a part of?
Yeah. I mean, I was a fan of the brothers' work um, from the start because the stories that they told, especially when they showed me Super Marco, which is a project they did out in the Philippines. Just a very like heavy film, but a very important message. And the way that they told it was very effective, I think. It was like it was supposed to make the audience feel uncomfortable or almost like guilty, but then like you understand that they're putting you in that place for resolution of to fill the problem. You know, like okay, so there's a problem, then they give you the solution, you know, or the resolution to the entire story as well. And I really like the way that they told it. It was almost Fincher-esque, but take that with a grain of salt in the fact that like Fincher likes it to feel real and like the audience to just be disturbed in their skin, you know, and then just kind of goes through the story that way. Whereas Tell Brothers, they make you feel it and sense that problem and then have a good resolution. So like when I read the script for Sleep on My Baby, they explained the situation out with North Korean refugees. I had no idea. Um, and when they were pitching the idea, I was very intrigued from the get go before I even saw the script. But then when I saw the script, I saw the dynamics of the story and the characters and the small nuances like the meaning of the hat and all that stuff, you know. And I was just very intrigued with the details that they had for their story, and immediately knew that they would be good collaborators to work with, you know.
Yeah. So did they have like a treatment or like visual references, or was it just a script, or like what were they actually showing you?
Initially was just the script, and then they did send over references as far as like color palette. Um, we discussed we discussed as far as camera movement. You know, is her world stable or is it unstable? Are we going more handheld or more static on certain in certain scenes and whatnot? Like The only time that I really locked off on sticks was when she made the decision to crash the bike. And when she crashed the bike, everything's just locked off because now she's at ease, you know. She can now make that choice of being free, you know, whereas her whole life was just not steady at all. So like we discussed a lot of camera movement, the focal lengths that we wanted to incorporate, like are we establishing distance from their relationship with longer focal lengths or wider lenses up close between her and her baby and stuff like that. We just discussed that on the pre-pro. And as far as the visual aesthetic, we just wanted a bit stylized, like one car Y, and then I kind of took some other ideas and sent them their way also, just kind of see if we're on the same page, you know.
Yeah. So were there any I guess like, you know, they had a color palette in mind and you guys talked about some of those visual ideas for motivating movement and focal length and whatnot, but were there any other like visual references in play or stuff that like you saw the script and you immediately had like strong visuals, or they did, or was it more like, I don't know, like what was that process like? Did they sort of leave most of the visuals up to you outside of that, or did you guys sort of set like lighting references, or what was that conversation like?
It was a lot up to me. They just kind of wanted certain emotions portrayed through the lighting and like the camera as well. But they did leave it up to me, like basically on the tech, like they just left it up to me. They're kind of more establishing the blocking and stuff. But it was very collaborative on the day as well.
Yeah.
So like if I was framing up for something and they're like, could we get focused on this area? I'm like, well, what do you think about this? You know, we're kind of like having a dialogue to kind of see what suits the character for that moment in time. You know, it's like, do we want to see the character and focus here or not? Because we want to create mystery here. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of it happened on the day. They allowed a lot of freedom, but I was not seeking approval. It was more just like experimenting, and then like if they hated, obviously I would change it and kind of
Yeah.
have that dialogue. But they allowed for this collaboration, and I thought it was great to be in unison on that thing.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but from the outside, it would seem like one of those pieces where um, I feel like you can sort of like set your tone and reference, but like you can't really get too specific anyway, because so much of it is going to get played out with like location and time of day and existing stuff, because you don't have that much control. So like setting up so much I don't know, like setting up grand intentions for yourself is often a waste of time because it's going to be like, well, we're going to make the best of what we got anyway. So it's more
Yeah,
about mood and tone in those situations anyway.
100%, man. Like I had no idea. They sent over the director scout images, and I mean, the house was just white walls and stuff, and I had no idea what art direction they were going to take.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit nervous. I was like, oh, geez, how am I going to make this like, you know, I'm kind of just working out the problem solving in my head, but I'm like, I have no idea what art department's going to be doing. But yeah, I mean, it was just like, it ended up working out really well. We had a great production designer and surprised us with some awesome stuff on the day. I'm like, cool, let's just throw up this light and do this. Like,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. Yeah.
So what was sort of the approach as far as, you know, you're working overseas and on a limited budget and stuff, like what were your must-haves to get your visual needs across, and like what was the, I don't know, like lighting and package, and how do you go about that?
Well, the funny thing about this is I wanted to try and implement new lighting techniques that I've never used before because I was really bored with my work. I hated everything on my reel. I was just like, I hated going back to the safe way of doing things. And I really wanted to try completely new things. And so like I inquired for certain lights and had a compromise for some third party lights that they had. And they actually ended up working out pretty well. But yeah, I mean, I the essentials that I had to have were the right lenses because I knew we were on a budget that was it was pretty scary
Hmm.
to try and make things work out. And I just needed the right lenses because just having the right like paintbrush would really help out.
Hmm.
And so I wanted those, and then just some like 1x1 light sources that I could just hang up anywhere, so I can like shoot 360 if we needed to like reposition or change the blocking or anything. And I thought that worked out well. I did inquire for some other smaller stuff too, but I think those were like the essentials. I just wanted to be very light and mobile with things. So
Yeah. What lenses were you shooting on?
the QnA anamorphics.
And did you have like a full set?
Yes, I did. Yeah, they were actually an amazing set. Usually they can be hit or miss. Like I've had sets that are just awful, and I do highly advise running tests on those lenses before you use them, or have your first AC. But since it was overseas, I had no idea, and I was just like, let's just put some other lenses on standby. Just crossing my fingers.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I think they were the right lens choice because working with the Ursa Mini, I just didn't like the look straight out of the camera too from the Ursa Mini. So I had to build like a look. We used a custom LUT, and then those lenses help, you know, create good patinas and effects that I really love to help soften up that Ursa Mini look. You know what I'm saying? I'm
Yeah,
not sure if you
totally.
know that camera, but
Yeah, I've shot a little bit with it, but I feel you. I mean, I had a shoot earlier this year in Chicago that I feel like was similar in that it was like sort of tight budget, and we knew we were walking into scenarios where we wouldn't have a ton of control. And it was sort of a similar where I was like, well, if we can at least get good lenses, like I would always rather have like everything you need, but if you can have one thing like good lenses and then just being picky with your blocking gets you a long way. So I totally empathize with that. Like, at least if we have some lenses with character, that'll give us something to the image, whereas if you don't have any control and you're just super clean, it can get super bland really quickly.
absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I totally feel you on that. So they did mention that the Ursa Mini was a mostly a logistical concern due to Korea or China not doing 3-day weekend.
Yeah.
So sort of had to shoot Ursa Mini. And like, what was that conversation like whenever that came up and they were like, hey, so about that, Alexa?
I was nervous about it because I've never used the Ursa Mini, Ursa Mini Pro, any of the sensors, and
Yeah.
so I wasn't quite sure on where it fell apart or where the strengths were. So I was nervous, to be honest. I was just like, geez, like I'm comfortable using the Alexa, or a Red, but I was up for the challenge because I mean, I wanted to make this story happen. I
Yeah.
felt attached to it and wanted to make it work out. So I went out and rented it, the Ursa Mini Pro, and just beat the crap out of it. Like I saw where it fell apart in the highlights and see if it could work on the shadows. Like how's the workflow with building your own LUTs and stuff. And yeah, so I had it for like a good 24 hours just testing it out, and then I felt comfortable with it. I decided on how I could use it when shooting this project and the things to avoid and what to take advantage of.
Yeah. What were your biggest takeaways sort of on the like pro and con side of things with it?
I see they're trying to be like the Alexa and the simple workflow, the first workflow, but there are a lot of quirks to it. Like you can only shoot 2x anamorphic in 3K, only in 3K, not like they're 4.6 or they're 2K. It's in the middle. They have like a 1.33x or something like that. It's just weird quirkiness like that,
Hmm.
and like the playback, like you have to be on the same frame rate in order to play back at that frame rate. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
And like the post workflow with the LUT wasn't accurate to the way that we're viewing it in our monitors. So there were like a lot of downfalls that way because I had to
Mm.
have my colorist import the LUT that I was viewing on, and it wasn't accurate as far as the gamma, the contrast. I was like, this is just, we're gonna have to really work this out again. The color science was there, but as far as the contrast levels, it just wasn't. accurate the way that I was seeing it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's always a bit of a I feel like a tricky one, especially if you come from like being comfortable with a certain camera to you go start shooting with something else. And like I had to do a shoot a little while ago and we were shooting on the FS7 and I just hadn't done it much at all. And the whole time I was just like, I have no idea what the heck is actually getting recorded right now.
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah.
zero confidence in whatever is actually, coming off this sensor right now. Um, but that's cool. So you have Ursa Mini Pro, Kawas, some 1x1s, and some other little things. And then, like, what was it like getting pulled into working with a foreign crew and whatnot?
Oh man, that was tough. But I have to say they were like the hardest working crew. It felt like I had 3 and 3. I mean, I really had my gaffer and a key grip, and like the communication, that language barrier was really tough. So I would literally just like have my laser pointer, which I advise LT DPs to have, and just like point where you want lights, and especially like for this language barrier, is just like this goes there, this goes there. Um, and then sometimes when it's not working, I'm like trying to communicate, but I'll just like draw on the ground, you know, the blocking is hard, like a lighting diagram. It's kind of funny. But on the day, so that was during a tech scout, me trying to communicate with my crew. It's very difficult. But on the day, like I walked in on set and everything was lit the way that I was discussing. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay, they actually got it. They actually
Yeah.
understood it. It was amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, they mentioned that like you drawing into the dirt with sticks, and I was like, this is a very different experience as a DP, but that sounds awesome. Um, that's really cool. So you're working with small crew, small lighting package. If you had to like, I don't know, try to summarize like the lighting style and visual approach of the film, like how would you try to quantify it?
Um, Sorry, could you restate that? I'm trying to think, see if I
Yeah, I mean,
understand.
I guess like if maybe a better way to ask it is like if you were to look at different people's pieces and aesthetics and like try to boil down the aesthetic into like, oh well, it's like, I don't know, high contrast and a lot of far side keys, or it's like this, that, or the
Yeah,
other thing. Like if you had to try and
yeah.
summarize the piece and like what your visual approach was for the whole
Oh, I
thing,
see.
how would you describe that?
Well, I'm glad you bring this up because this was like the whole thing that I had in my head. I was like sick of this approach I was doing. I mean, I'm staying true to my voice as a DP, but I wanted to try new things, implement and
Hmm.
kind of stretch out my voice where I typically do a very naturalistic, low contrast, far side key look. But I was like, you know what? No, I want to try front lighting. I want to try having the key directly behind camera. I want to go really extreme with the colors. I want to go really extreme with the contrast. I wanted to make it stylized. I want to incorporate stylization into my voice for once. And looking at Wong Kar Wai stuff, you can see that in his work. Another inspiration is one of my favorite DPs. His name is Adam Arkapaw, who's like, I mean, mind blowing. He's
Yeah.
inspiring Roger Deakins on Blade Runner, like that whole orange scene,
Yeah.
with that one person you see Ryan Gosling. Yeah, that was probably influenced from Macbeth
Yeah.
2015, just saying if you
Oh
look at
yeah.
it. But
Totally.
like Adam Arkapaw is a very stylized cinematographer, and I've always looked up to his work. It's not like mine, but I'm just like, you know what? I would like to incorporate Wong Kar Wai's, Adam Arpapaw's aesthetic mixed with my voice. That was kind of my approach. Which you can see, it's very apparent. It's a lot more of a contrasty, very like hyper saturated blues for like the like blue hour, which really was just overcast. So we
Mm.
created these very strong LUTs that have these looks. I hope that answers your question, Evan.
Yeah, no, I think it does. So like I definitely I feel like felt that same pressure of like just frustration with your own system. And I feel like it's good to get those projects that sort of let you break the system, because at least in
Yeah.
my experience, it's like when you're working constantly, you're not really necessarily trying new things. You're just enacting your system over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, what was your process to actually do that, because I feel like that's the thing, is like we can be comfortable in what we do and know that we're sort of sick of it and want to try something else, but the actual like, okay, so how do I actually do that without being just terrified the whole time? Like, was there research and stuff that went into that? Was it talking to other DPs? Was it just trying something different? Or like, how did you actually create this new aesthetic that was outside your maybe wheelhouse?
A lot. Yeah. A lot of it was just researching, watching movies, and then kind of working in Da Vinci building looks as well, just to see on how, I could push things around as far as the color science and the contrast. And a lot of it was the pre-production, because on the day, I mean, yeah, you could be nervous, but if I was doing so much prep that, especially when I rented the Ursa Mini to kind of get familiar with it,
Mm-hmm.
like I established like a look that I liked, and then I, yeah, I felt like it was there, even beforehand. So I wasn't like worried on the day. I was like really excited because it was something refreshing that I've been wanting to try. And in fact, after the shoot, man, it was the most rewarding shoot, because it was like I pulled it off. Like I just I wasn't like a cog, in this machine. It was like
Yeah.
I felt like I was finally expressing this artistic voice that I wanted to do. It was like this release of creativity that was just in me,
Yeah.
that just had to get out. So
Yeah, I think that can be such a key thing too. And that was like, I had a shoot a few weeks ago that was this like high key vertical video thing for this app. And it was just so outside my
yeah,
wheelhouse of like moody, easy rig stuff, And I don't know, like I feel like I was happy with it at the end of the day. It wasn't perfect for a number of reasons, but there was something really satisfying about just like coming away from that and being like, this is not just the same thing, and like I still feel good about what we were able to do, and like the research and like time spent into making a plan and just executing feels really satisfying and gives me a degree of comfort with even bringing aspects of this into my other work, so that maybe I go back to some of those other jobs and now have just some extra tricks up my tool belt to be able to use, and sort of helps. Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. You're like keeping your voice, but also broadening your perspective and your ability to actually execute that in a way that is weird to think about.
absolutely. I remember you were prepping for that. You're like posting things on the Facebook group, and just being like, oh, like high key lighting. I'm doing a vertical video or whatever, and you
Yeah.
posting some behind the scenes. It looked awesome. I would love to see the final thing, just to like,
Yeah, I can send you some frames from it. It was fun. It was definitely different, and it was cool. Like it was cool getting some insight from other people too. Just of like there, it sort of went through a few iterations of how I was planning on tackling it. And the funny thing was that I like basically made a plan, got on set that morning and hated it, but I was able to pivot because of a lot of research that I had done into like a lot of high key photographers and stuff. And it was
yeah,
really, I don't know, there was just something really satisfying about like, okay, my like plan A totally isn't working, but like you've done the research and thought through it and everything to be able to pivot something and try something different. So it was a
yeah.
fun shoot. But for anyone, I know some more people have sort of jumped in on this since we started. If anyone has questions, you can sort of jump in whenever, or you can leave a comment in the chat and I'll call you up. But if anyone has questions for Jared, we can hit him up. Philip asks, do you find yourself wanting to adapt your style or voice often?
Um, adapting how so? Like,
It's a good question. Philip, you're welcome to actually talk if you want to as well. But I mean, I guess I would say for myself, like there's this tricky line of we all have things that we feel really comfortable with. And
yeah.
like, do you mostly just skew towards projects that you feel comfortable with? Do you feel like you get
Uh,
asked to do projects that are less comfortable, or do you seek out projects that are less comfortable? Or like, how do you balance that, like knowing your wheelhouse and also knowing whatever else is all out there?
okay, so that's a great question. I do want to answer Phillips as well. So like, so if I'm up for two jobs, one that I'm comfortable with and one that have never done, like this just happened recently, I'll always choose the one that I'm most uncomfortable with, because it'll stretch you the most
Mm-hmm.
and you'll further your career in that way. Like I was up for an automotive job, and it was like a 3-car like pack shot, one shot with like perfect lighting on 3 cars. I was like, what? Like,
Yeah.
how do I go about doing this? And like, so I saw the boards for that, and then another job came up that was more comfortable, like an easy rig, like very floaty. I'm like, okay, I'm going with the automotive one. And I was so stressed about it because I was like, you know what? I'm excited because I don't know how to pull this off exactly by scale. I know what I would do, but I just don't know like how big of lights do I need to bring in. And you know, it actually ended up being an awesome shoot. And yeah, I mean, I came out learning something absolutely amazing on how to light sheet metal with certain colors as well, and the amount of power and the huge rags we had to use, you know. And so yeah, I came out a much better cinematographer after the fact that I chose a harder job, if that makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
Because now I have that in my tool belt, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll have to have you back on to talk about that once that comes out, because those are always like, those are the things that for me, even like if you're watching a football game and some of those shots come on, I'm like, how the heck do they do that? Like, I would not have the first clue how to handle some of those just like enormous things they're doing and making them all look perfect. So I'd be really curious.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that too. Philip, so about adapting my style, like every time I'm on set though, I'm always trying to stay true to my voice. Being like, if it's looking good, like my contrast ratios, I'm like, I'm gonna try and stay true to those by, you know, you just feel it. You feel if it's working out when you're
Hmm.
lighting it. And then like say if the agency's like, well, this isn't quite working. I mean, I have a number of things that I do to make it work out, but I'm not sure if I should disclose it if we have some people like that listening, you know? So,
Yeah.
um, but I'll kind of finesse things to work out because we're all on the same team, you know, we're trying to make something work out. So like I'll finesse it, but I'll still, if I'm feeling like it's not working, I'll make the changes to work for me still, you know?
Yeah.
And if not, then I'll just tell like ETR, I'm like, hey, boost the brightness or lessen the contrast on the agency's monitor. You know, like
Yeah.
just keep them chill. I want to be happy with what I'm seeing too. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, so you're balancing, you're sort of sticking to your core guns on your aesthetic while also, sort of taking those little tweaks in to help make sure everyone's happy, but it's all still built around your core sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. My philosophy is like they hired me based on my reel, which has a certain look, a certain aesthetic. I'm going to give them that look. I'm going to give them that aesthetic first. Obviously, I mean, if the director's sending mood boards or visual references that skew it, I'm going to do it based off that, but still stay true to my vision, you know. But like if it's too much out of a different look that I'm like that just doesn't resonate with me, then I probably just would, you know, try my best, but
Yeah. Well,
it's
and I
still
think,
go ahead.
yeah, I think, no, I was just gonna say, I think something that I would add is that, like, I feel like we all have our aesthetic voices and like we have techniques and things that we tend towards, but at the same time, I don't think our voice is like this one super specific look, like
Yeah, yeah,
my voice is not like moody Far Side Key, Easy Rig
yeah,
stuff. And so I can do high key and still have my voice in it. And I can do low key and I can do, all these different things and have my own sort of personalization to it. And I think that that's something that just getting yourself too locked into the idea of like a technique or a concept or a gear thing or whatever is your voice is like very limiting, when I think that your voice has more to do with like how you see the world and how you're going to tackle any problem, whether that's high key or low key or whatever else, and so
yes,
you can sort of tweak that and figure out where those worlds come together. But our voices are not as simple as like, I don't know, even if you look at a director, like it's not just doing one strictly specific kind of thing. Like there are people who take their way of viewing the world and apply it to a variety of different genres and scenarios. And I think the same thing can be true of cinematographers.
yeah. I think you pinpointed that just perfectly. You know, I mean, look at all the guys who are doing features. They're not every features have the exact same look. You know, like
Yeah.
Prieto doesn't like have the same look that he did on Silence for every film. You know, it's not the, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
totally.
they're different paintings that you're making, you know, and you still can see like similar brush strokes that they're making as far as like lensing or camera movement, but like, yeah, you're using different paint or whatever, you know. I'm just trying to make it
Yeah,
metaphorically, because it's like, that's truly what it's about. It's just what feels right to your eye and, you know, to your voice. But
definitely. Anyone
Philip, I hope
else?
that answered your question, man. I'm sorry if I went on a tangent.
Oh, you're good. He said that it was a perfect answer. So 10 out of 10.
Okay, good.
Best answers. We're solving the world's problems over here. Anyone else have questions for Jared? Um, okay. So we have Ethan asked the question. He said, off topic, but Jared consistently has amazing black and white images in his Instagram stories. What are you shooting these images on, and why are you utilizing Instagram stories rather than a normal post to share them?
uh well, thanks for enjoying those black and whites. That's like my hobby, is doing the black and white street photography. I so I kind of pigeonhole myself into doing this 2:4 aspect ratio into my Instagram, and like if I steer away from that, I feel like I'm gonna destroy my
Dude,
wall, you
the
know.
world's gonna fall apart.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know if it's like this perfectionist in me, but I like my black and white images a lot more than what I'm posting as far as my Instagram. But yeah, I just do them on my stories just for that reason, because I have that 16:9 flipped sideways. But I do have the black and white images on my website, on my stills page. So if you can revisit those, you know.
Yeah. So I guess to the second half of the question, what are you shooting them on, and why do you do stories?
Oh yeah. I'm shooting it with the Fujifilm X100F. And the reason why I have the F is because they have the Acros black and white film emulation, which is amazing. Like Acros is just one of those films that I love. And they also have the color filtration that you can apply to the sensor. So like you can have your darker blues, you know, dark greens pop the skin out by having your red, yellow, or green filters. It's phenomenal. I think what the Fuji has done is phenomenal.
Mm. And are you doing all the processing in camera on those then as well, or are you doing anything after the fact?
Nope, it's all in camera. I just do that Wi-Fi, transfer to my phone, and just upload it. I think the images straight out of camera are just beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good question, Ethan. Um, he said that he will definitely check out your website to revisit those photos. So
Thank you.
Benny asks, can you talk a little bit about Elise? Was it just something you did on the spur of the moment? Question mark.
Yes. Elise, it's oh thanks, Philip. Yeah, Elise. So I did this job for this social media app called Soul, and that was like a 5-day job, and then I had the weekend with the camera still. And I just like, after we'd wrap a day on the that commercial, I would just kind of plan out this dance piece, you know, that I would shoot the weekend where I still had the camera package. And so I just got a dancer and got a location. Then one evening I shot it. Like I just, yeah, I don't know. And that piece has done so much for my career. It's hilarious, you know?
And was that just you, or was there anyone else involved in that?
Just me, and there was a photographer friend there as well. She was doing some stills. But it was just me and that dancer.
How do you, in that situation, like you want to make something that's more of a personal project, you have gear. How do you go about setting yourself up to succeed where you don't have like a whole crew and you probably don't want an overly complicated concept? Like, I don't know, how do you put yourself in a position where you feel like this is doable and we can make it look really good and like everything's going to be awesome, but we're not biting off more than we can chew, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Um, I had no idea how it was going to turn out. In fact, my whole plan, my idea was going to be like this voiceover that was going to happen while she's dancing and tell a story, but it ended up being too long and just didn't work out. So I was just like, on the day, I just had like haze and just kind of flowed with her. My whole inspiration was from To the Wander, this Terrence Malick film that I watched, and I just love the movement that Chivo did. and just the way he flowed with the talent. So I kind of wanted to experiment with that. But so yeah, on the day I just hazed up a room, and the sun was setting on these windows that were just placed perfectly and create these shafts of light. And so it just kind of worked out, you know.
So how quickly, if you're in this sort of golden hour, perfect circumstance, like how quickly did you have to shoot everything before that was gone?
We shot for like 2 hours. So the sun was
Okay.
pretty high at the start, which you can see in some of the shots. It's like more consistent look through the windows, just bright. And then it just starts creating these shafts of light. And then even when the sun set, I kind of like just favored some different angles, like the wall where now this gold light's hitting the walls or whatever. I would just kind of float with it. I didn't have shots in mind. I wanted to be like Terrence Malick and just kind of flow with what the talent was giving me, kind of,
Yeah,
you know, do this ballet with the dancer in a sense.
that's awesome. What did you do for camera movement in that?
It was just easy rig.
Nice.
Yeah.
Repping the easy rig.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude, they're the best. I love mine. I'm sort of bummed that we're not using it at all on my shoot tomorrow, but I'll be okay.
Yeah. You'll recover. You'll recover.
Yeah. It's a fun though, sort of to some of what we were talking about yesterday. Tomorrow's a fun shoot because we're doing like basically tabletop stuff.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, but it's like on a seamless with sports memorabilia, and it's like doing colored light and stuff. So it should be a fun shoot because it's very different. I assume. I don't know. I don't think anyone here works for ESPN, but it's for like a hype video for a Celtics Lakers game next week. And so we're like filming old like shoes and jerseys and stuff like that.
Nice.
So it's
Nice.
fun to try and like make very static things look interesting. So
Yeah.
it should be fun, but they want to do like, do green and purple light and stuff. So it should be fun. It's very like outside of my comfort zone, but I think it'll be a fun day. So I'm looking forward to it.
Wow. Well, awesome, man. I'm sure you're gonna learn some cool things as well, like we do on
Yeah.
every shoot.
Yeah. I'll probably rip my hair out a few times and it'll be good though.
Yeah. Are you just using sticks, or are you on dolly, or what are you using for?
Yeah, we're gonna do a shuttle dolly, which is basically a Dana dolly, but the
Okay, yeah.
much better Kessler version. So for anyone
Yeah.
watching, you should go play with the shuttle dolly. But yeah, so we're planning on doing dolly, doing a mixture of like macro stuff, and then doing some like wider full object shots where they're gonna like track in graphics. But the like reference is actually the Hotline Bling video, and so they want to like
Oh,
do
okay.
it on a white seamless, but like turn the seamless green and purple, and then like play with lighting the objects separately and stuff.
I see.
Um,
Okay.
so we'll see. It's an interesting sort of where they were like, let's make everything colored except for the object and stuff, but like it's not really a big thing. We're like shooting it in a conference room at the Hall of Fame, so it's balancing like making it look really cool and making it actually doable. So it'll be a fun
Yeah.
shoot.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I'm excited to see what you do, man.
Yeah, man. I'm sure it'll be on Instagram. But Philippe had another question, which I guess is for both of us. And he said, I'm going next year to Ethiopia in February, remote area locations, shooting a doc type project. Any essentials I should bring with me or things to watch for? Hmm.
Hmm.
Power
Doc stuff.
adapter?
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, I guess there's two ways to tackle it. It's like the production side of things, or like things you as a person should bring with you. I'm a firm believer in my beefy phone battery bank for all travel jobs because I will suck my phone battery down on planes.
Yeah.
Um, what are the other things that end up getting busted out a lot? I don't know. What do you think?
That's a tough question. Um,
I think stuff that you can travel with and control, or stuff that you can plan on picking up locally. Like if you don't have much as far as lighting or anything, but you can bring even a pop-up reflector or get like some white and black cards when you get there or something, just to give yourself a little bit of control, can be really good. Some like small battery powered light sources, whether it's
yeah.
little quasars or something like that, just to give yourself a little flexibility.
Yeah.
um,
I think rags too that you can just pack and then like just clip them up, or just get like paper tape or whatever, or even
Yeah.
garbage. What I do is garbage bags. If it's like we don't have like any doobie or anything, I just do black garbage bags, cut those up, and put
Yeah.
them, as negative or whatever.
Well,
Sometimes.
it's funny on that point. I actually have a few of these on my floor. One second. But I've been using black party tablecloths,
Oh,
and they're
that's
like
awesome.
$1 from the dollar store, and they don't weigh anything. And so yeah, we'll just pack a few of these in my bag, and then you bust them out. I don't know exactly how big this is.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, a total shout out to Nate Hertzellers. He taught me this trick, and I've been using it ever since. But they're like
Wow.
5 feet by 8 feet or something, and so they're pretty big and cheap, and you just use them up and then throw them out. But they're good for controlling. You can sort of. I did a shoot a while ago, and we like crammed them all into the like blinds on a car and stuff to like black out one side of the car, and you can just sort of stick them wherever. So they're a nice little trick. They're a little less ghetto than trash bags.
Yeah.
But trash bags works too.
Well, they're pretty thin. That's the problem. You'd have to like double up, especially if you're doing like a window.
Yeah.
So is that pretty thick then? So like if you put it over a bright window, does it come through?
Yeah, I would say it's thick enough. Like I've definitely knocked out some windows with them. You probably would want to double them up if you needed like total blackout. But for most scenarios, I don't think I've ever actually doubled them up because they've knocked it down enough just throwing them on there.
Awesome. Well, there you go. I mean, because I don't do so much dock work. I've done a handful of them, but the essentials, I know a couple guys who do them, and they would be the guys to ask. Like, yeah, there's Bjorn from Chicago. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, like Amundsen?
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, he does a lot of dock work.
He has a killer. He posted on his story a while back, but his like traveling system is so on point too. Like with his like 3 bags that he flies with or whatever, and like what goes where, and he's got a really good travel dock setup. So you should hit him up about it.
Yeah, super cool guy. Really talented too. But yeah.
Other than that, I would say bring some shoes you don't mind ruining.
Yes.
And long pants in case you end up anywhere sketchy, but I'm sure it'll be fun. That sounds awesome. So Ian said, can we chat about the film for Project Alive? I'm really curious about how you worked with producers and the director to develop that piece. What did prep look like? And I'd love to know the basics on production in terms of crew, camera package, lighting, etc. Felt really natural, and I'm curious how much of that was spontaneous versus planned.
Yeah, so a lot of it was planned. Caravan invited me on. They're the production company. And then Christian Schultz was directing. Basically, Christian and I connected, and he wanted to find a first project for us to work on, and this happened to be it. And the story is very heavy and hard to watch. But we wanted to kind of have 2 different perspectives for the audience to view it in. Finn, the child, which is supposed to be like this very happy, very, optimistic life and view. So things were supposed to be happy, and then the parents are having a harder time. So we kind of wanted to play with the fact that like it's darker, it's like more obscure. Like I'm shooting through mirrors or things, and things are obstructing images, given like not perfect compositions and stuff. And so we're kind of telling the story through 2 different eyes. That's that part. Like Christian and I discuss more the subtext in that way. And then, sorry, let me see if I'm getting to sorry, one more time with the question just so I can answer them all.
Oh, you're good. So what did the prep look like, and sort of basics on production in terms of crew, camera package, lighting, etc.? And curious how much of that was spontaneous versus planned.
Yeah, a lot of it was planned. We had a schedule on the birthday, and then we had the different scenes too that were scheduled out. So it was planned in that sense, and we let them do what they do. In a documentary situation, you just let the talent do what they're doing. And then, but they would give us time to light or kind of manipulate the image the way that we needed to. So that's how we approached that. The documentary. I use the Amira, and then we
Best camera
use the.
ever.
I love it, man. That is such a good camera. I see it on your shirt, man. I bet every day you're wearing that.
Lots of love. I forgot I was wearing this shirt actually. Oh,
I'm wearing the RE blue right now.
there you go.
So, um,
I won't tell Johnny.
oh man, that's hilarious. Yeah, so we use that, and then the Canon Cine lenses,
How
and
do you like those? To totally sidetrack you for a second.
they're okay. They definitely have the Canon look and the flares, the magenta flare that comes in. I like the speed of them, but that's about it. I
Yeah.
mean, they work well. They're clean and stuff. There's some downfalls too, like yeah, the alias. Let me see now. So we have the yeah, we definitely have the flare. I don't like that magenta blob that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, my experience with them, I had to do a shoot with them a little while ago. I've used them a few times, but specifically on the most recent shoot was just that like they're good, but they also have some weird stuff where like it seemed like there were a lot of issues with chromatic aberration and stuff on them, which I just sort of
Yes,
felt
yeah.
like shouldn't be an issue on lenses that like new and expensive.
Absolutely. I do remember that. Yeah. Especially when shooting those trees in the highlight. I was like, yeah, we definitely have that chrome aberration going on.
Yeah.
So
So that was my total sidetrack on glass. But so you've got a lot of planning, you've got scenes and Amira, and so what was sort of the like lighting process and visual process for that film?
a lot of it was since the production they know about lighting and stuff. They have like an in-house DP and stuff, and so they knew about scheduling and how to have it scheduled at the right time. So basically, we had the birthday at like a perfect time where they're backlit and the sun was peeking through, quite nice to. And then, but yeah, all the interiors I just used a lot of practicals, turned on lamps, and then had kinos and like an RE small kit of like I think like 650,
Hmm.
some 650s or something like that I used.
Do you ever
Um,
bring in practicals?
I don't. I usually just like for preliminary gear list, I put an additional thing in my art department suggestions, and I would say bring some of these things. I'll tell my gaffer to bring a lot of bulbs, like 40 watts, 25
Mm-hmm.
watts, or whatever. But as far as like I try and give suggestions to the art department, like we would love to use lamps. Please bring in lamps,
That's a
with
good tip.
these. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
like
always one
there's
of those
always
things
that.
I don't
Go
think
ahead.
about. No, I don't think about it. And I always feel like there have definitely been times that I regret it. And then I hear other guys like, oh yeah, we just like put a couple practicals in the truck. And I was like, that's kind of smart.
Yeah. I just have my guys bring in light bulbs because I don't like to step on the art department's toes. I just like please suggest this to art department that I would love to have these lamps, these lampshades, with this kind of texture, whatever, and
Yeah. Yeah, that
just to
makes
help
sense.
out.
I mean, and I would say for anyone listening to it, probably depends on the scope of the project. Like if there is an art department, defer to the art department. And if there isn't, then, you bring your own lamps.
Yeah, you can be very hands-on in that sense. That would be
Yeah.
very nice.
Cool. So I'm gonna ask Sean and Kyle's questions, and then one more question, and then we'll let Jared go. So if you have any other questions, oh, my microphone's running away on me. You should put those in, and I'll pick my favorite one, or Jared can pick his favorite one. So Sean's question is pretty quick, which is, do you bring your own dimmers?
Uh, I have my gaffer do that.
It's a
Yeah,
good call.
and I bring dimmers for every single light.
That's also a good call. I usually would leave it to production unless it's a scenario where like on some of those more like travel dock jobs and whatever else where we're not bringing a ton of stuff, sometimes I'll bring a few just in case, because sometimes those things just get missed and whatever else. So in general, if there's production infrastructure, just make sure you note it to someone. But there are
Yeah,
times that I have a few that I own that I'll bring just in case, because sometimes it's not worth bugging production about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so then we can get to Kyle's question. And again, we have one more question after that. So whoever wants to hit us with the best question, you better start working on it. So Kyle asks, any advice on trying to get experience as either a camera trainee or assistant under a DP when you've only got experience doing one-man band things? Should you send reels to production companies or straight to DPs? Thanks.
So the goal to be a DP, is that?
I would assume that that is the goal. I don't know if you want to elaborate, Kyle, but I guess with the initial goal, maybe of just like getting on-set experience as like a camera trainee or camera assistant, and just to
Oh, I
get
see.
your, just sort of maybe for someone who doesn't necessarily know what they want to do, but just get their foot in the door.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I think yeah, working under the DP's departments, will definitely help out. Or any department that kind of interests you. Just yeah, be an intern, you know. So like work with the AC as like a camera intern or something would be very helpful because then you can see how the DP works and stuff. You can find out what really interests you.
Yeah.
But but yeah, if you want to be a TP, I just say you just be shooting. Start now and start shooting.
Yeah.
That's the fastest way to get to where you want to go. But just to understand how set works, then yeah, I think doing an internship, a couple productions would help.
Yeah. I agree with all that. I think if you want to be a DP, that starting to be a DP is your best course of action, even if that's just taking stills or whatever you have access to at first, but just getting yourself in the habit of making images, and then making whatever you can is really critical. And I think that if you want to sort of get on bigger sets and sort of build experience, which I think you can do alongside shooting stuff, especially at first, then I would say it probably depends a little bit on your market. If you're in like a New York or an LA, then it's totally a good idea to go offer to be a trainee or an intern or whatever. If you're in a little bit of an off market and you don't have as much big production, then I would say just go volunteer to PA on stuff at first. And so if you can find whether it's production companies or filmmakers or whatever in your area, DPs, and just be like, hey, if you need an extra set of hands on set. I mean, I know guys who, let's say even like one guy in particular I worked with in Chicago who I knew had a lot of experience and stuff, and wanted to work with us, but he was willing to come out on set and he PA'd for like a half day, and he just came out and did it for the heck of it to hang out and whatnot, and like he
Yeah.
crushed it, and the producer immediately hired him as the gaffer on our next few gigs because he like had the experience. But just coming out and like PAing can quickly open up doors to other things if you come and hustle your butt off and don't just sit around and eat crafty all day. So just doing whatever you can get your hands on, I think, and making friends with people and showing that you want to work hard and you want to learn, and like asking smart questions. And I think that's another big thing I would say too, is like I personally appreciate people who both want to learn and like ask questions, but also like recognize when we're like frazzled and don't need to be asked questions. But there's nothing wrong with like if you're on a set, like asking someone, hey, like what's your thought behind this, or like why are you doing this way. I personally appreciate that. Maybe there are people who don't, but I think it's good to just get on set and learn whatever you can.
Yeah, I agree. I also would add like Elise, man, I just shot that in and then after, I mean, like during an evening, and I was done a lot for my career. So like just doing your small passion projects, if you have a camera, just try your best, you
Yeah.
know,
Or go make friends with someone who has a camera, do
rent those
some
out.
extra work and rent something, or there are a bunch of different deals you can work out. But even if you pick up a few days PAing and put that money back into like a discounted rental with the production company or something, like anything you can do to just get hands on what you need to make what you want to make is a critical step.
I feel like a lot of people don't know that, yeah, rental houses do discounts, and like they need to be aware of that. When I started, I was like, these are the set rates for everything. But
Yeah.
you just let them know that you're doing like a spec piece or like a passion project that you have no money for or whatever. And yeah, I mean, they'll negotiate for you. It's really nice.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I do think that one thing that it's always worth asking, but especially if there's any time where like you've been doing some work, where you have been like renting stuff and they sort of know you and have a relationship with you, and then you say, hey, now I want to do this personal thing. Like there's more room when you have a give and take than when you're like just strictly asking for discounts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's still always worth asking. But especially, I would say if you have a local rental house, developing a relationship with them, even if it's just to rent little stuff at first, and then being like, hey, we have this thing, and we need X, Y, and Z. If you have any sort of emotional real estate with them, and they have stuff sitting around, usually you can get some gear together.
I agree.
So, okay, last question. There's a few in here. This is tricky. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts? Do you have a favorite question amongst these?
I'll go through them. Let me see.
I like all of them. I think Benny's might be the most helpful to everyone question.
Okay.
So Benny asks, how did you get started in learning about lighting, and what fixtures did you originally practice with?
That's great. I got learning about lighting initially with using small area like the 650. Like they have the small Fresnel lenses. I mean, you know what I'm saying, the lights. And so I would just like experiment bouncing them into the ceiling, seeing what effect that would do. And then I think also followed like Shane's Inner Circle. I subscribed to that early on when he started, and some other like podcasts helped educate me at the start of my career. But so when you like work with these smaller fixtures and see what they do, then you understand like you can grow them by scale, you know? Like for me, when I did this automotive thing, I was like, well, that's the biggest lighting setup I've ever done. And I had no idea to scale how I do it. But I knew that if I've done smaller stuff that had the same effect that I wanted, so I'm like, okay, well then I just need coverage. I just need thing of scale. So like we made this softbox like 30 feet by 60 feet that had like 60,000 watts of light just blasting, just because you understand that like you're shooting reflections on a car kind of thing, and like it starts out small, where I knew that I wanted to do that look because I shot a music video before where I did like a 12 by 12 overhead and just blasted some lights through there, and like just creates a cool effect, and like we had some looks like that. So just to see like you can start out small if you understand the quality of light and how it works even in a small form. When you get to bigger stuff, you're like, okay, work with your gaffer and your key grip to think about scale, but the look that you want and how to achieve it. Your gaffer and
Yeah.
your key grip are there to help you as far as like what technical things you need as far as like measurements and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I would definitely say that like one thing that I feel like I did not have a good handle on for like the first few years of making stuff is I didn't really understand quality of light, and I felt like it was explained in this very like ethereal way that didn't make a lot of sense to me. And so I feel like my lighting was very much confused and directionless in a lot of ways because of that. And when I finally started meeting people who actually explained things like the size of the source and its effect on the softness of the source, and like things like the interaction between brightness of different sources, and like these basic things which can at first seem very technical and very like non-helpful. Once you start to understand those things, they're like super critical, and then building out any idea you have and sort of reverse engineering anything you see. And then everything past that for the most part is scale. Like there's nothing magical about a 20 by versus a 6 by, except for that like you can put it 3 times as far away and get the same softness of light because of the way that those things scale. And so in the same way, like you start to understand that part of why you're not getting the look you want is that like the inverse square law comes into play, and if you do all little lights, like it's not going to bounce off that far wall as much as actual sunlight would, and so you're not going to get as much return, and it feels sourcey. And like understanding these little technical things helps everything else make sense when you're like, why doesn't this look the way I want it to? And so doing whatever you can to get your hands on that information. I mean, and listening to stuff like Patrick's podcast at the Wandering DP. He does a really good job of explaining a lot of technical things. I'm sure there are some really good like cinematography books and stuff out there, even because this is something that people have been thinking out about forever. And then I've tried to do a few for my own shameless plugs, like Patreon videos, just talking about like what I consider the core things behind like lighting 101 and 102 and how those things interact with each other. So that can be helpful as well. But once you understand those concepts, then everything sort of scales infinitely, you know? And so if you're doing tiny little tabletop stuff, it's all the same, but smaller. And if you're doing a giant, exterior scene, it's all the same, but bigger. And so I think that's a critical thing, is that if you can get a hold of those basic concepts, then you can really take that and use it anywhere. And then the fixtures and stuff don't matter, because that's another thing, is people are like, what about the quality of light versus this light and that light? And it's like, well, you put a 650 through a silk or a quasar through a silk and it still looks like a silk, And so once you start to understand modifiers and a lot of those things, you can get your head out of the weeds on some of that, like looking at a DP and going like, what light did you use for this? And it's like, well, it doesn't really matter. It's like a harder source over here, a softer source over there, and how those color temperatures are playing and stuff. So a lot of it is more strictly conceptual than it is like settings and all this kind of stuff, and like really understanding the metering and fixtures that were used. It's understanding those big picture concepts of how someone's building an image. So there's my rant for the day. But I appreciate that question. So thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you to Jared for coming on and chatting. I think it was a good time. We have to do this more often. It's like the podcast, but like less, I don't know, lower key than the podcast is a little bit.
I know. We're just hanging out. We're just at a coffee shop talking. I love it. It's nice.
Just chilling. But cool. Well, thanks, Jared. We'll talk to you guys soon. If you have any other questions for him, go annoy him on Instagram or something. And we'll see you guys next time.
Perfect. Take care.
Bye.